The first thing that struck me in the film is there's an opening load of text, but it's not an opening crawl, but it's written like an opening crawl. I mean, how did you settle on that as an opening?
It was an ongoing discussion and experiment, and we screened it for small audiences, you know, without the text, with the text, and we landed on that as a sort of a you know, almost a 70s kind of a the whole thing had a sort of an aesthetic of a 70s movie. We could imagine a heist movie beginning that way, you know, and explaining some of the things that the text explains.
Yeah. Obviously, Solo, without giving anything away, does a fair bit to set up possible sequels. How did you balance the need to seed that in with the demands of telling a standalone story?
There are no intention of seeding sequels.
Right. Okay.
I think as it evolved, there are some threads that look pretty promising and intriguing. You know. But it could also very easily end here and still set up New Hope, you know. But it you know, it's a fascinating world. Any criminal, you know, corner of any nation, and certainly of this universe is going to be sort of ripe with possibilities and juicy stories.
So with that said, would you be interested in doing another one?
I certainly had a lot of fun doing this, and I really do want to hear fans sort of speak to, you know, how they feel about this movie in terms of its tone, which I had a lot of fun with and really admired. But you know, Star Wars movies are controversial, and I'll be curious to you know, to know.
There's loads of cool cameos in the film, like your brother Clint, say, and Anthony Daniels, but are there any we might not have noticed, and what's your favourite?
We didn't sneak in any big celebrity cameos. None of my buddies were in town, although a lot of them you know, emailed and asked about you know, what our shooting dates were. So there were folks who were definitely curious, and you know, maybe if I'm ever involved with another one, we could work some of those folks in.
Yeah, it felt to me like there was an unusually strong influence from the sort of TV side of Star Wars, like Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars in this film. Do you agree that there's more crossover?
I think there probably is a bit more crossover, and I think some of that comes from the generation of people who are working on the films, and certainly there are veteran voices from you know, from 4, 5, and 6, and then there are others that have just sort of grown up with it and see it as a more all-encompassing universe, and are much more open to that. So these kinds of creative conversations were really fun and interesting. And the one thing that I would say to fans is, you know, there is no cynicism around these people. It's not manufacturing. There is outside of the saga movies, there is no intention about sequels. It's always a process of let's explore and let's then understand, you know, what those movies mean to audiences, and the people who work on the movies, who know the culture of Star Wars so well, they're never on autopilot. It's never manufacturing. For them, again, it's like a culture they understand, a rich, exotic culture, but they're creatively inspired to keep exploring the possibilities and the boundaries of it, and that's what keeps it. It's really fresh and exciting to be around it. It makes it a lot of fun.
And my final question: there's obviously lots of references to older Star Wars films and Easter eggs. Which Easter egg's your favourite, and what's something you think audiences might miss?
There's a little Easter egg related to another movie that I think is a cousin. And this was not my idea, but I fully supported the idea of planting this little Easter egg, and it's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Larry Kasdan also wrote that, and while this wasn't his idea, all right, I'll go ahead and say it. It was his son John, and you know, I do think these movies are sort of cousins, because you know, Han Solo was not only played by Harrison Ford as was Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones is a kind of a version of an awkward yet adorable and ultimately effective hero who gets himself in and out of scrapes. And it's a singular adventure story. And this is a singular adventure story, unlike the other movies, which have been war stories and these sort of epic family dramas.
Yeah.
And so this one has this kind of this other vibe, this other spirit, and in some ways it does remind me of Raiders.